I know,
I work
right?
from wherever I want. It's amazing. It's like the best thing ever.
Yeah, there is nothing better than being able to just leave whenever you want and still not have to worry about like your schedule because you can still do whatever you need to do. I love that, dude. It is the
It's
best.
legit. Yeah, like I literally, and even yesterday, which was amazing. This was something I like haven't really done too much in the past because whatever, but last yesterday while I was flying on the plane, I was like, I'm gonna just code because I was like didn't have anything to do. So I sat on the plane and coded, and I was here in like a second. Like the time flew by so quick
No, dude, yeah.
because I was coding, and I was like, all of a sudden I was like, man, I was trying to like code more, but we landed. So
Dude, that is such a good sign there that you actually like what you're doing. Because I notice that all the time. Like when I sit down, I'll be like, all right, I'm just gonna code for like half an hour. And next time I look up, it's like 4.5 hours. It's just gone. And it's like, all right, I
yeah.
guess I still
Oh,
really
dude,
enjoy
it
this.
goes so fast. Yeah.
It's insane. It
So
really
it
is
was
crazy.
yeah, it was cool. Like, I haven't really done that before in a plane, so that was a cool experience. Good morning, Bryce.
Morning,
Uh,
Bryce.
Big congratulations to Bryce. He's joining our web dev
Woo!
incubator along with our two newest members, Eric and Randall. Not the one on the stream here, but there's another Randall inside the group. Congratulations, guys, on taking a huge step forward in your
Yeah.
journey as a developer. I think that's a huge accomplishment, and it's a big commitment, but it pays off. So you guys will see. I know guys inside of here are already seeing it. Good morning, Eric. See, Eric's here. All the people who are in our incubator are the most engaged people in here, which is amazing. And you guys are getting so much out of your
You
time
know
here.
what's
So
funny though? You get the most out of things when you put things into it too.
yeah,
Like nobody can
it's like
make
a
you
pretty
learn, dude.
simple formula.
We can get a lot of help, and if you put the effort in, man, you'll get a lot. Yeah, look, they're all here.
Good
What's up,
morning,
Randall?
Randall. Yep, we are just talking about you, man. Yeah, it's funny. So anyway, good morning, guys. Glad to see
Good
you
morning.
here. It's bright and early.
Before
It's
we get
actually an
into it,
hour earlier here in Mexico.
What
ooh,
is it?
It
talking
is,
about
yeah.
Mexico, for anybody who may be watching a stream who hasn't commented yet, let us know below how you say hello down in Mexico in the comments if you're watching.
Yeah, let us know.
Russell will be able to
Like
tell
our,
you if it's correct.
yeah, I've heard it a few times so far.
Probably at least once or twice.
Yeah,
So we got
but
an
yeah,
interesting topic today.
yeah. What's our topic? Tell us.
Oh,
Okay,
thanks,
so
Eric.
so here's what's been going on. I've been listening to a lot of people, communicating with a lot of people in the group, and I keep hearing people say like, "Oh man, that JavaScript thing. Oh, geez, that's really a lot. I'm trying to. It just seems like it's a lot. Like I did HTML and CSS, but like JavaScript is really. God, I'm gonna tackle that JavaScript thing, and it's kind of like there's a lot of sentiment that JavaScript is this big, massive thing that's really, really difficult.
You know what I
Yeah,
think part of the like it's funny when you're learning HTML and CSS at first when you first start out. I remember thinking this too is like it's like in a sense they're so simple because it's like okay, here's my element. I'm writing a paragraph text, so I need the P element, right? Like or I want to target this thing. So it's like direct.
I'm just laughing at Bryce.
I
He
know.
said,
I just
"Una
saw it too.
cerveza." Yes, that's how you say hello in Mexico. You are correct, Bryce.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But then how do you say goodbye? Dos cerveza?
Yeah.
I'm leaving. Yeah, but it's
Tequila
fun.
is
So
how
I
you
think
say goodbye.
later. Yeah. But yeah, HTML and CSS seems so simple, and then you get to like JavaScript is a real programming language, It's much more flexible and it's a lot more like you can do anything with it and at the same time, so it's not as clear. And I think that's what scares people. It's just not the clarity is gone. It's like it's open-ended. You
Yeah.
can do anything with it. But I think
Yeah.
that's like I think we make ourselves too afraid though, and that fear then it limits us from actually moving forward and actually learning it faster and realizing that we don't need to know everything to move forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think also one of the big challenges with JavaScript is that like there's just so much more to it. HTML and CSS, it's like you have HTML tags, you have attributes, and that's pretty much it. And there's different ones for different things. It's very straightforward. CSS is the same way. You have like a way of identifying an element on the page, and then you have attributes or properties that you can apply to it, and that's it. Whereas JavaScript, you have so many different things to like understand, I guess. And on the basic level, I don't think there's anywhere where it's just sort of outlined. I think the important things that you need to learn before you can move on to JavaScript frameworks. And one of the things, I mean, Eric wrote in the comments here, which I think is a great point. He's like, I've already gotten so much out of the incubator in a short amount of time. And that's because we focus on the things that are the most important. Like, you don't need to know every single thing that happens over time as you're a developer, and you just like get your hands dirty and start to learn things. But we focus on the most important things. And so that's what we're doing inside the group, is we want people to learn the most important parts, but then go on and start building things, because that's how you actually start really learning. And so that's what we're doing inside the group. Like on Wednesdays, right, we have a coding session where we all come together and code together. And the point of that is not that you need to understand every single thing about coding to being involved in that. The point is that you actually don't, and you're learning as you code, right? And I think that's the biggest thing, is nobody, like, a lot of people don't understand the basic concepts that they need to learn in JavaScript so that they can move on to the things that are the most important. Because, and this is something that I think enlightened a lot of people inside our group this week, is that you don't really code in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript most of the time. Like, well, JavaScript in the frameworks, but like you're not building websites in HTML and CSS. People don't do that anymore. So
they're being compiled into HTML, CSS, and JavaScript after the fact. You know, it's funny. I remember this, like when we first started out, I remember all three of us going through this though, where like all of us were struggling with like, do I know enough to move on? How do I know that I can move on? Like, do I actually know enough? I'm not perfect. I don't know everything yet. And it wasn't until we all started just like doing projects and failing a bunch that we realized like, oh, we can just move forward. Like you don't have like I think everybody gets stuck in this headspace like I'm not an expert. I have to be an expert before I move forward. It's like, well, you're never gonna learn that because you're never gonna be an expert. Like you have to like just push yourself forward into the unknown, and that's where you learn the most and like realize that you have the confidence you can do it.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely in
Bryce hit the nail
programming.
on the head, sorry.
Yeah, definitely in programming, but in everything else in life, the more that you learn, the more you realize you don't know, right? And so, as you learn more about each of these topics, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then JavaScript frameworks and backend tools like databases, APIs, you're just going to keep learning more about them. And as you learn more, you're going to be like, oh, that just opened up a whole nother world of information that now I don't know. And but if you sit in one of them, like if you sit, and this is, I think, what we're getting back to at the topic, is there's so many people who start out development and they're like, cool, HTML and CSS, they're easy and it's comfortable to just sort of sit in them. But then you never end up actually progressing into anything, right? You just sit there and you're like, cool, I know HTML, I know CSS, and you just keep building projects in those and barely touch JavaScript, and then you just get stuck. So,
well, yeah, it's like all right, when we were in the boot camp, and actually it was funny because when I was talking to Bryce last night about this, the same thing came up is like when you're by yourself in a boot camp and stuff like that, or trying to learn on your own, it's so easy to get discouraged. Like I think really I was saying to him yesterday, I was like, dude, the only thing that saved us and made us be able to progress so fast was that we committed to meeting every week early on and have never stopped doing that. And that like accountability, but also just that community made it so much easier, dude, to learn and to not just feel so lost all the time. And like you have no clue what's going on, what direction you're going in, and then you just give up, right? I mean, it's natural. It happens to everybody. So I think like that's like one of the biggest things too we provide people is this chance to like have a group of people to rely on, to lean on, and to also just be there for them. And it makes it so much easier. It's like you're doing this together. It's not by yourself anymore. Yeah.
And you get to teach other people inside the group, which helps solidify your own knowledge too. I mean, I see Chris doing this on a weekly basis, and I honestly want Chris to do it more because I see him sort of hold himself back sometimes too. And we try to encourage that because that's really the best way that you guys can learn is by actually teaching others what you already know, because it helps you like actually solidify that in your own head.
There was this guy who was kind of smart named Aristotle, and he said that you only know something
Never heard
if
of
you can
him.
teach it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's not Plato or Socrates, I really just don't care.
Yeah, right. So
So
great.
great.
Dude, Bill and Ted's was such a good movie. It was like totally underrated.
So I want to
So,
get back to this because
oh,
Bryce was saying, go ahead. You
well,
can talk.
I had
You
a
got something to
question. I
say.
had a yeah, thank you. I had a question actually in the realm of this. So,
Yeah.
at least we made the title of the episode JavaScript. So, of JavaScript, I have some ideas, but what do you guys think are some of the more important topics to actually
Mm.
learn from JavaScript?
You asking us or the people watching?
Oh, yeah, if people watching, sure, post it down there in the comments, but
Yeah.
I'm actually talking to you guys.
I mean,
Um, Go
you
ahead,
want to go for it?
Danny.
Okay. I would say like some of the basic things you need to know before you move on is like understand basic data types. They're essential to know, like the difference between obviously like integer, boolean, float, all that stuff, string. Some of the standard methods you need to use with them. So like, methods used with arrays, like map is really crucial. You'll use that a lot. You need to
Mhm.
understand functions. Arrow functions particularly, I think, are crucial, but both know how to write functions in each way. And I think the logic is one of the most important things that people forget to pay attention to is how to build complex things from simple logic, right? Like you have like basically three logical operators. You have and, right, which is both things true, or one is and the not. And then you just have a bunch of control flow statements like while, if, and stuff that you just combine to make complex logic. That's really all you need before you move on. And then you learn the rest. And yes, there is the DOM. It feels really overwhelming, but it all also goes together. So it is systematic. Like, you end up doing a lot of the same stuff no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think, you hit a lot of the important things. And I know that's like I'm listening to it and I'm hearing you say it and it makes sense to me, but I know how that can be super overwhelming for people. So I think there's sort of a logical progression for how you need to learn JavaScript. The first is what you said first, which is data types, right? You need to understand what is a string, like that's words. What is an integer? That's numbers. What is a Boolean? That's true or false, right? You need to understand the basic data types. And then you have like the more complex data types, which is really just in JavaScript, it's really just arrays and objects. Most of JavaScript is just objects, right? And handling those objects. We talk about the DOM, and that
Oh yeah,
stands for the
objects are essential.
document object model,
Yeah.
right? And the DOM is just an object that represents what's on the page, right? And I would say this too, like the DOM seems more complex when you're just working in HTML and CSS, like vanilla, I'll say it that way, because you have to navigate through the DOM, right? Where you're this may be going over some people's heads, but you'll get to this, right? Where you're using dot notation to basically, add nodes or remove nodes or navigate through the DOM by saying like you start with the document, then you get an element by something like an ID, a class, and then you can do things to that element by manipulating it. You can add styles to it, you can adjust it in different ways, right? And so that seems very confusing when you're working in vanilla, right? And the reason why is that that's the only way to really handle that. But when when you're working in JavaScript frameworks, you can manipulate elements directly. Like you don't have to actually navigate the DOM all the time. You still can, right? So it's powerful to know those things because sometimes you have to. But most of the time, you can just do it writing JavaScript directly in the component itself, and you don't have to you know, add a node. You can literally just do that by using JavaScript. You can add nodes as if you're adding an HTML element, which is pretty powerful, right? So I think those are important. I think there's a couple other things. I mean, ultimately, like what I was gonna say is you want to get to a point where you know the things needed for a JavaScript framework. So obviously, there's like the control structures, like what you said, the and or not. There's also comparison operators, right? There's a post
Yeah.
that I made a few weeks ago that it's just like one of those visual graphic posts, and it tells you like most of this stuff, right? If you understand that, you understand like 90% of JavaScript, right? Because you want to be able to compare, like, is
Yeah.
this number bigger than this, and if so, then do this, right? um and what else? functions, obviously. So you want to be able to write a function that does something. So that functions are pretty intuitive in what they mean, right? They do one function, and that's how you should write them. They do one thing, and then they have a name to them that describes that one thing it does, and then you can apply them throughout everything else. Also, you want to understand events, right? And that's sort of CSS too, but we use that in JavaScript. So like, on click, on hover events, how do we handle those things? And then the other things I would say that are like pretty important are dot notation, which I covered before. And that's just how to like and bracket notation, like square bracket notation for arrays. So that's how to navigate through data. And then when you get into more complicated JavaScript, like working with APIs and databases, you also want to understand asynchronous programming, which is basically like letting something happen, in the background before moving on to like the next thing. And then once you have those, that's a lot of what you need for JavaScript frameworks. And then once you get into JavaScript frameworks, you're going to learn other things in there that are sort of more important, but you don't need to learn at first. Like you're going to have modules, error handling APIs, like moving data around a project, things like that. But I
You
think
know
if
what?
you get those core ones, you're pretty good. Good, Dan.
No, that's a really good list. And I know it sounds like a lot, but I think what people
Yeah.
forget to, I'll make this comparison, it might help. Like when you first start learning HTML, like I remember being excited when I could remember the boilerplate code, you know, like how
Yeah.
to set up like the doc type, the head, the
Hmm.
HTML, all that. I remember being so excited when I remembered how to do that from memory. And it's like, but then as you progress forward, you realize, oh, there's like a cheat you can use right in Visual Studio Code to
Yeah.
create that every time. No problem, I don't have
Yep.
to type it out. And it's like you start using that because it's more convenient. And I think what we forget is
Yeah.
like, no matter what you're working with, JavaScript seems overwhelming, but you're going to use the same stuff over, like a lot of it is going to be repetitive, boilerplate. You're going to use the
Yeah.
same type of functions, same types of stuff over and over. And it's going to be these very interesting cases where you solve problems that you do something unique maybe. And you're going to be competent enough to look that up at this point because you've done it enough times to like you understand how these things work. And I think we forget that that's kind of more like the skills are important, but also understanding at higher level makes it so much easier to solve problems in code. And like understanding how
Yeah.
stuff's working in the background, which I think is like something big we bring to the table too, is like we were talking about just like the file structure. Like nobody explained that to us in React apps. And when you know that, it makes it so much easier to work with it. Like it's
Yeah.
insane.
Totally. Yeah. Because when you install React, all of a sudden you have like a folder that has 100 files in it, and you're like, I don't know what any of this does. And it looks. I think one of the things for me when we did the boot camp and we learned React, I was like, I don't know if I touch anything in any of these files, what's going to happen. Like I'm just going to break stuff, and I don't know how to adjust it. So I was so scared to mess with anything that I ended up
Yeah.
doing pretty much nothing. And I think,
It destroys your
that,
progress, right, dude? Because you just like
yeah,
stall yourself. Like it's ridiculous. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think that you bring up a good point related actually back to JavaScript, because this comes up too. And I think this is one of the other reasons. And if you guys like have reasons why you feel like you got stuck with JavaScript, or, why you're struggling to learn it, I'd love to hear them, because I think we can help you with some of the mindset around that. But
Mhm.
I think one of the things that stalled me with JavaScript when I was learning is like HTML and CSS, you can't really break much with it, right? Like if you put an extra HTML tag in a page, it'll still load. If you like apply the wrong style, it just won't show up. But if you do something in JavaScript that's breaking, like the whole app breaks, right? And you start getting red everywhere and errors and all sorts of stuff. And so I think that can definitely be daunting at first. And when you're a new developer, like seeing things break is scary. And you think like there's no way back, or you might mess up your computer, or there's just like different things that come up with that. And I would say this is that you're never going to break something beyond repair. And if you do, you can always just delete the folder or the file and start over, right? So I know that's scary at first, but it's really important to just
Yeah.
actually break things.
How many times have you? I've done this. I can not even count how many projects where I like just deleted the whole project, recloned my repo that I had on
Totally.
GitHub and just
Yep.
started over because I was like, well,
Yeah.
I don't know. But like once you get
And
over that, though, you're so right, dude. Like that is when you start
yeah.
really moving forward and realize getting that confidence. Like, oh, it doesn't matter if I break this. It's just software. I built the stupid thing. I can build it again. Like, you know?
Yeah, and I would even say this, like actually breaking things makes you a way better developer because there's things where like you this sounds funny, but like you get used to seeing errors and you start to know what errors mean. And so like I know this from inside the web dev incubator is like I'll see people do something and then they'll have an error and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that is because I've seen that error like 100 times before, right? And that can be scary for some people, um but that's part of it, right? That's becoming actually a good developer is being able to see errors, handle them well. And then that's actually part of JavaScript too, is like error handling. So how do you build your program so that when an error happens, it doesn't break everything, right? And that actually makes you like way better.
I just want to
Um,
say something. If people are having trouble with the video today, apologize. It's probably since Facebook changed the custom streaming thing. I think it's been having some difficulties. So it sounds
it
like
could
there
be
was
that
some
I'm in
lag.
Mexico too.
That could also be it too. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
It's Facebook today. Yeah,
Yeah, but no, I think you're
So
you're dead on, man. I think like that was the moment where I think all of us progressed so much was when we stopped being so afraid to break things. Because that's when you learn. Like you said, I mean, that is the
yeah,
most crucial time. You start to learn how things act. Like one of the interesting things is like when you first start with a framework, it's like mess with the files and see how it breaks things. Because sometimes that'll
yeah,
teach you, like, oh, if I mess with this config file, that's what that actually is. Like, like
yeah,
I remember learning for the first time like how to
mhm,
add new scripts to the like config file for like a Next app or a React app, right? And
yeah,
like that was interesting because like it was just something I'd never like learned before or knew, but it's like when you start messing with these things, you just learn a bunch of stuff and you don't forget it because it's a problem you really solved and one that you encountered on your own. And I think that's a
yeah.
huge part of learning.
You reminded me of something else that I found super helpful. That helped me like when I was first learning, which was building projects that like code along projects. So coding with a more advanced developer on projects that were like way above my head. Like I used to do it on LinkedIn Learning. I would like build some projects on there. Also, I think JavaScript Mastery, I built some of his projects and they were way above my head. And like I didn't understand totally what was going on. But what you do is you just build the project along with them and then you go back and you try to understand what you built, right? So it's a two-step process. You have to go back and do the second part, which is like dig through the code and figure out what you built and then change it a little bit so that you actually feel like you're understanding. But I think that was super helpful for me as well because like you can watch all the tutorials you want or read MDN docs as many times you want, but until you actually start like building with it, it's a little bit hard. And when you're new, it's like, what do I build? Right? Like
Dude,
there's, you know,
well, you
that,
remind me of something with that we're talking about the videos, like that one on React and Firebase was such a good one on LinkedIn. I remember that we did a long time ago.
yeah,
And like, but it was at the time way over my head. But I think two things people fail to do when they watch tutorials like that is one, code through the whole thing yourself. So like that video I
yeah,
think was like about the total time watching it for that video was like 5 hours. I think it took me a
yeah.
week to do totally
Oh
because I
yeah,
coded the whole thing and I
yeah,
had problems throughout, it was way over my head. The other thing is what you said too is really important is when you do a tutorial and code like that, then add something new to it because it
yeah,
forces you to actually not just be like, okay, it works. I'm stepping away. I built that. Yay. It forces you to
yeah.
actually do something unique. Like I
And
remember
you
like
usually
way
break it
back.
too.
Yeah, way back when I was learning Python, I built a little game in Pygame, and I remember I added a scoreboard thing to it, which was awesome. It
Yeah,
broke a ton of times, but it did finally work, and like I learned so much doing that. That process, and then you also like if you do show people that project, you can say like I added this. This is something new I added. This is the problems I ran into, and you have something to actually say. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. We're getting close to the end here, so I want before we do that, if anybody in the comments has questions, we're more than happy to answer those. I know that JavaScript is a huge topic, and we can only talk so much about it in one session. Um, But maybe, in future ones, we can go through some of these things a little bit in more detail so you guys have an understanding of like what to learn about each of them. Do you have something to say, Randall?
Yeah, while we're waiting for people to submit those comments down below, we're doing something really interesting in Web Dev Incubator is actually we are starting with React. You see, most people start with HTML and they take months to learn HTML and then months to learn CSS. And then if they get around to JavaScript, they start doing that. And then they give up long before they ever get to a framework where they realize it's actually kind of super easy. So what we're doing is actually starting from React. And it's something that I haven't seen done anywhere else, but it's something that can get somebody to actually where they could build legit web apps pretty darn quickly. So
Yeah.
if that is something that you're interested in doing, definitely schedule a call with us or message us on Facebook or just post down in the comments
Just
of this
write
video that you're
JavaScript
interested
in the comments.
in Spanish. And
Yeah.
just write JavaScript
Just
how they write it
in
in
Espanol.
Mexico.
You
And
know,
yeah.
you know what's funny? I just want to say one thing. Like, I know it is 100% possible to go from not knowing anything to making your own full stack apps in a year. And I know that's possible because we all do it.
100%.
Like
Yeah.
all of us. Like, and not now, granted, to be honest, like, yeah, my stuff is much better now than it was, that year, but it's doable. And I think like that's the thing that you need to remember. Like, you just have to commit to it and be motivated and stick with it and not give up. And there's times where I wanted to quit too. Everybody does, but like, it's just sticking through that I think is crucial.
Yeah, I mean, this past Wednesday when we did that call, there were so many like mind blown moments with, I know
Yeah.
Chris, Eric, I'm pretty sure Randall had some too, where they were like, "Whoa, I can actually," and I'm not talking about this Randall, but I know you had some too, but like where I just showed people like you can build like a modal component in a few lines of code, right? And I was
Actually,
like,
that was my mind that blew on
I
that one
know,
because when we did our boot camp whenever ago and they were teaching modals, it was probably like a good week we were working on building a modal. And it
Oh,
was
yeah,
gee.
on a terrible website that we were building and just a totally
God, it was the
ridiculous
worst.
modal. And it was
yeah,
I can't even count. It was probably 100+ lines of code to build this thing. And then
easy.
we were using Daisy UI the other day. A few lines of code, copy paste, you got a modal
Four.
just like that.
It's like
And it's
four
Yeah,
lines.
just yeah.
And it handles all the BS that you don't want to handle with writing. Like, because I can write a
yeah.
modal from scratch. It's not hard, but it's annoying. And these are always look the same and they're great.
Yeah,
Oh,
and it's
Timothy.
like,
Oh,
good.
sorry. He actually asked how much coding each day time do you suggest? Do you guys want to each give? Because I'm curious
Yeah,
actually what you guys say to this.
yeah, I think that's a great question. So, um, yeah, Eric said, I love our React
Hmm.
sessions gotten so much out of JavaScript.
Thanks, Eric.
So I would say this in terms of time. I think one, it really depends on your own schedule, right? I would say the best amount of time that you can spend coding each day is at least an hour. I think an hour is enough because generally there's some like setup process. Like you have to sit down, you have to have like your coffee or your drink, you have to open VS Code, you have to like plan what you're coding. Um, so I'd say the minimum should be about an hour. If you can hit that, that's a great number, especially when you're beginning. And consistently, an hour a day is amazing. If you can do more than that, that's bonus. When I go to code, I like big chunks of time because it allows me to work through building features. So I will typically code for 4, 5, 6, 8 hours at a time sometimes. But it really just depends on your own schedule. I find that coding for me is I can do small chunks of coding throughout the day, but there's a lot of distractions throughout the day. So I find that coding at night is very effective for me, or having like this is why I like coming to Mexico because I'm going to sit here for a full week and just code and build a lot of stuff because I there's no distraction here. I can just sit up here on a rooftop and code for like 8 hours a day and that's it. Um, but like at home, there's a family and there's distractions and it's summertime now. So like, the best time for me is usually at night when everyone else is sleeping and I can put in 6 hours of, from 8 or 9 p.m. until 2 in the morning, I can code pretty easily and get a lot done. So, but I think an hour is reasonable.
Yeah.
What do you
I
guys think?
agree with that. I would say the least amount that you can consistently do for a year. And so here's the least amount that you can consistently do every day for a year. And here's why.
Yeah,
So like so many people go so hard into something at the beginning and burn themselves out. So like, dude, awesome that you couldn't code for 8 hours, but some people listen to that and be like, okay, I gotta do this for 8 hours a day. And the first 3, 4 days they'll do 8 hours a day. And then they'll just give up like 4, 5 days in. And so like
yeah.
I would
You don't
say
want to do that.
do yeah, don't do like work yourself up to that area. Like the best analogy that I have for this is lifting. So like I used to burn myself out lifting. Like I would go hard. I would go like 4 to 6 days a week and just be like, yeah, and that would last for 2 or 3 weeks. And then
Yeah,
I would be done for a year. And then all of a sudden, I was just like, okay, you know what? I can do 2 days a week. And I can do 2 days a week. I'm not pushing myself too hard, but I can do that consistently. I did 2 days a week for a year. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know what? I want to take it up to the next level. So I just started doing 5 days a week. And it's so much better because I built myself up slowly. So like your
yeah,
recommendation of an hour a day is great, but for some people that may even be too much. Like I know,
yeah,
like I would recommend everyone in the group like ask Chris to see his GitHub contribution graph because there was like when we started talking about this with him, he just started doing enough a day where he could add one contribution to GitHub a day, and you could see for there was barely anything happening, and then all of a sudden just green boxes all over the place, and that made
yeah,
a whole difference because that's literally the point when he became a developer. Like you can see it visually.
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's a good point. Just like when you're starting out, it can be daunting. There's a lot of things that are difficult to understand about coding, and that's normal. Every developer goes through that, so you're not alone if you're feeling that. And what you said about Chris is 100% correct. Like, I think an hour a day is a good amount for like if you want to be like committed to this, like super hardcore, like I'm going to become a developer. An hour a day is a great place to start. But at the end of the day, if you spend 1 minute a day, literally 1 minute a day writing code and committing it, or even not committing it, just writing something every day, you're building the habit, which is the most important thing, is that you build that habit of like doing this consistently because that's, I know I danced around the idea of coding for probably 5 years before I considered myself a developer. And it's because I never consistently did anything. I would like dance around, oh, today I'm going to learn Python. Today I'm going to learn CSS. Today I'm going to learn some HTML. Today, and there would be huge gaps between that. And every time that you go back, you have to relearn the things that you like forgot. So if you can be consistent, that's I think more important than a certain amount of time. But yeah,
No, I
Danny,
agree. I agree with you
what's your
guys said.
opinion on
I
that?
just wanted to add, like, when you're transitioning careers too, 'cause I know like that's most people, I would imagine in this group, like if you haven't learned for a while or you've been out of it, it's can be daunting and difficult at first. And the important thing is not to get hard on yourself. If you really want to
Yeah,
do something, you can do it and just commit. And like you guys said, every day. I think an hour is a great mark to hit, but if you can't do that, like even 5 minutes. And don't forget to like planning stuff out, thinking about these things also counts. So like designing a web page, like reading something
yes,
about it, like all of that counts when you're learning. So keep that in mind and just also like I just to reiterate what you guys said, have a plan. Don't just like because I think that we all did at the beginning, like I'll learn a little Python today. That's great. Oh, it got hard. Now I'm going to switch to JavaScript. Now I'm going to switch to this. Now, and it's like you don't
yeah.
really learn anything because you just keep moving from one to the next.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we teach inside the incubator as well is just having like quarterly planning so that you know where you're going, what goals you're trying to accomplish, and how you can like stay aligned with those goals and continue moving forward. Because there's a lot of distraction, and I have to talk about Bryce's comment. He said, "No distraction in Mexico. You're doing it wrong." But
Yeah,
yeah, but
yeah, yeah.
it's important is like to stay focused on exactly what you're trying to accomplish, right? So Python, like I saw somebody in here, I think it was Melissa, said that she started with Python because it seemed easy, and that's great. But if your goal is not to be a Python developer, then that you're just wasting time at that point, right? If your goal is to become a web developer, then you should be learning web development consistently. So
Yeah,
um, yeah,
cool.
cool. Any other questions? Throw them in there super quick. Otherwise,
If
uh,
not, throw them in there and we'll answer them later. It's also possible.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And if you guys are, I'll let Randall do it. Go ahead, Randall, do your little spiel. If you guys are interested in,
If you guys are interested in changing your life, like let's say you've been putting off becoming a developer because you think it's too hard. Like I was doing this with hacking for the longest time forever because I thought that, hackers are just these super smart people that are just like these absolutely brilliant. I just don't have what it takes. And I wanted to be one since I was probably like hackers came out in 95, so I was in my early teens. And it took me until I was 40 to where I was actually just like, well, a little bit below 40, but I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to go do it. Like, who the heck cares? I'll at least give it a shot. And I think a lot of people get that place with development where they're like, yeah, I want to be a programmer. I want to be a web developer. I want to make six figures. I want to be able to work wherever I want, live wherever I want, work for myself, work when I want, where I want, who I want. But they're just like, but you know what? That's just somebody else. Like, I just don't have what it takes. And maybe that's true, but you're not going to know until you really throw yourself in there. So if you are looking to literally change your life now, well, then the best chance you got, and I believe us, we've seen a lot of boot camps, we've
Yeah.
seen a lot of other university educations, everything. The best chance you've got right now is to join Web Dev Incubator. So you can just
yeah,
like type JavaScript down below in the comments. You can or contact any
just
of us
reach
on
out to us.
Facebook.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and at least see if it's right for you. It's a no. We're not going to try and force you to it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. It's definitely not for everybody because we want
it's
people who
definitely
are
not.
interested in actually changing their lives and are willing to put in the work. We can't do it for you.
Yeah, and that's very true. I mean, we want people who are super committed to the idea of becoming a developer, and that's what we're looking for. It's not for everybody, but if you want to see if it is for you, like Randall said, you can write JavaScript in the comments or just reach out directly to one of us, and we'll set up an action call with you where we basically one provide you a little bit of value to guide you on where you're going right now, so you can at least get some free value, even if you don't want to join. We'll help guide you on like your journey, but also tell you a little bit about what's inside the Web Dev Incubator. And I think this is important because we should mention this because Bryce sort of brought this up and this week, and Bryce is a new member to the Web Dev Incubator, and he was like, "Hey, I actually thought it was just sort of like a boot camp," and I think it's important to stress that this is not a boot camp, right? It has
Nope.
some of the traits of a boot camp in that there's a curriculum, but the real thing that we focus on here is the human element of becoming a developer. So there's a lot more to becoming a developer than just learning the syntax, right? Companies are not, there you go, Estella said JavaScript. So yeah, if you guys are interested, just write JavaScript below. Companies are not interested in hiring people who just know syntax, right? They're not hiring syntax, they're hiring the actual human being behind that. And so our what we're doing here is actually sculpting people into developers, teaching you how to learn about software development. Um, it's not the cost of a boot camp either, like Bryce said. Yes, it's way, way, way less right now, and it's not going
Yeah.
to stay that way forever. We're doing this because it is pretty new, and we're honest with that. But we want to provide tons of value. I mean, you see what we provide in these live streams. You can only really imagine what you get inside the Web Dev Incubator. But I'll just explain it really quick. But
Well, I
if you
should say,
guys
if you're
want,
on the fence, now's the time because you have about maybe a
yeah,
month before we raise the price. So, like,
and
seriously.
it's going to be raised significantly. So if you are on the fence, now's the time. Write JavaScript in the comments or just reach out to us. But basically, what you're getting is multiple things. You're getting obviously a curriculum that walks you through HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, databases, all that good stuff. Everything that you probably would get in a boot camp. But the more important thing that you're getting is you're getting 24/7 support through private Telegram groups. So anytime you feel like you're struggling mentally, motivation, coding, whatever it is, like just in your life, we are a community of at this point guys, but also in the future, I'm sure there will be girls as well, who just are here to support each other on this journey of becoming a developer, right? And so no matter where you are, whether it's like, hey, I'm just having a bad day and I need somebody to like hear me out, or I don't understand this JavaScript thing, we're there for you 24/7. And there's three of us. It's not just like one person who's responding to you. There's three of us. We can respond at pretty much any hour of the day, no matter where you are in the world. On top of that, you get 2 different coding sessions every single week. You get a Wednesday coding session, which is a code along. So we spend 2 hours actually coding real web apps with you and using like modern JavaScript framework, which is React and Next.js, right? So you're actually getting to code things along with more experienced developers who understand these things where you may be struggling, right? And you can ask, I mean, you can just look through the comments at all the guys who are in there who have already said, I've learned so much in just a few weeks from just being inside that group, right? And then what we have on Saturdays, right after this call, in about a half hour, we're going to be jumping on that call, which is our accountability call. And that's basically, we walk through what everyone's done this week, what you've worked on, what your successes, what your challenges are. We look at code reviews of the projects that you're working on, and then we personally give you assignments of what to work on next so that you can progress towards your personal goals. That's a taste of it. There's so much more in there that you get just from having a community, from being more involved. But it's a really great community that we're building. I mean, I see the comments that the people inside the incubator are saying right now, and it blows my mind because I could never imagine. Yeah, it's amazing. Like I could never imagine anybody in our boot camp saying anything like the comments that these guys are saying, right? Like nobody's saying, oh my God, I've gotten so much out of this. Like I've learned so much about so many different things like motivation, cybersecurity, web development. Like there's just so much that we pack into this because we have a diverse skill set that we can bring to the table. I mean, we even have skill sets of digital marketing, SEO. Like there's just so much that we bring to the table that you're not going to find anywhere else. So go ahead, Danny. Did you have something to say?
Oh no, I was gonna say no. I'm just super proud of it. I think like if this existed, dude, before we did the boot, I would have done this because it's so much. It's so we designed this to address everything we hated and felt was
Yes.
lacking in the bootstrap camps and in colleges. And like we've been there. All of us have been through it so many times. So like this is not that. It's designed around it to make it better, to be for
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
But
And
we should
I
run
didn't
it.
hear you guys mention the individualized pacing. So this is something that turns a
Yes.
lot of people off
Yeah.
with boot camps, is they kind of get left behind in boot camps. And it's very easy to happen because boot camps are super fast paced. But what we offer is individualized pacing. So we will literally move at the speed that you need to go at because each person is going to learn differently. Each person is going to progress
Yes.
differently. They have different things going on in their lives. So this is another area where you'll really benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, I don't want to take up too much more time because we need a little break before we get on the call. But Estello and Timothy, I see you guys wrote JavaScript. Awesome. I love that you guys are making steps forward. So we will reach out to you after our call. So that will be probably 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we can set up a call. If you want, you can just go ahead over to, what is it?
The action
We'll put
post.
the link
I'll
below.
actually post the action post. I'll respond to action post to their comments, and then they can do
Yeah.
that if they want to book a call, or we'll reach out
If
after.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
you can just book a call directly through the link he puts in there. Otherwise, we'll reach out to you and set that up, answer any questions you guys have. But with that, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another live stream. It was our pleasure to do this for you guys. And we will see you next week at 9 a.m. We've been doing this every Saturday for like 4 years now, and we don't intend to stop, whether we're in Mexico or wherever we are in the world. We're here for you guys. So yeah, awesome. So great to see you guys again. And everybody who's in the incubator, we'll see you in about 20 or so minutes.
All right.
Thanks.
Peace, guys.
Peace.